right, Clean Freaks, we're back with episode 2 with our Sterile Packaging Expert 2024, the Packaging Princess, Malinda Elammari. Welcome back to the series, Malinda.
Thank you. Super excited.
Episode 1, we were able to dive in to some of the nuances around these seals, particularly around pill pack maintenance, and we talked a little bit about the pros and cons, or at least the different approaches to self-seal, and then also for the machine seal, the heat sealing. But that brought up an interesting topic that now we need to dive into for today's episode, and that's around the maintenance and testing of these seals. And maybe we'll start with the testing portion first. You mentioned probably an unapproved test on the last episode. I think you said if you blow into this pouch, it'll come up with a balloon sometimes if the seal is bad, right? So that's not an approved AMI test, I'm assuming. But, if we were to test these, that approach I think is important. Just thinking, if we take an action in our process, how do we test if that action is actually working? So, just that consideration itself, I think, is really important to slow down and say, okay, if we're taking a step and it's related to packaging, how do we know what we're doing is compliant and it's actually doing what the IFU has told us to do, but then it accomplishes what that IFU is trying to get us to accomplish, which is a real sterile barrier, which brings us to how do we test these things? So on the user side, how do we think about that? Is there testing out there that's approved? Where do we start?
For testing, when we look at AMI ST79, Section 13 talks all about quality and testing of your machines each day that they're in use. And every time we see testing, it's each day that it's in use. For some reason, when it comes to our heat sealers, for instance, that critical piece of machinery, there's no discussion on when that should be tested. But when we look at the concept of it's a piece of equipment that is a crucial piece of equipment in our department, that should be tested each day it's in use. And we should be doing some type of quality testing on those machines to make sure that we're achieving that seal and it's a nice, flat, even seal. And so one of the things that we see often when we go out, myself and I know my coworkers, when we do audits, a lot of issues around bar heat sealers. So you've got bar heat sealers and continuous feed heat sealers. So those are the ones that just roll straight across. And the bar you flip up, right? So bar heat sealers have a Teflon roll inside them that has to be rotated on a routine basis. And
many people are not aware of that.
Nope, they do not know that has to be rotated. They don't even know or realize that there's a knob on the side to do that, or that the knob's missing, that it's no longer there. So, when we look at that and we notice that, nobody is rotating that Teflon roll, you start getting breaks and the Teflon roll gets destroyed. You get holes and cracks inside it. And that's because we tend to go into like the center most of the time, right? It's human tendency. We just stick it right in the center and we don't move it around. And so we get a lot of buildup, right? We get dark buildup from the heat on those rolls, and then we start getting breakdown. And so just rotating that on a routine basis as per the IFU, which says routine basis, and that's however the facility deems is routine. Maybe I recommend once a month, like not going too much, because then it's supposed to be PM'd every year, right? So rotating that helps create that, make sure you have an even seal and that machine is being maintained. So we see that a lot with continuous feed heat sealers. The tendency is if it's not being PM'd, the rubber that rotates, right? Like that rotates the wheels inside it, that tends to break down. And you'll start seeing, like, we get phone calls or emails sometimes saying, hey, I'm getting black pieces inside my seal. Like, I don't understand where this is coming from. And then when we look at the heat sealer, that whole rubber rotation belt is actually broken down and damaged. So not just doing quality with in-house, but also PMing, sending it out to be maintained and making sure you're maintaining that process so that you have the right seal. So there are tests out there. There is an ink test that you like do one seal, like you take a pouch, you do one side, you put the ink packet inside, you seal the other end, and then you break the ink. And it'll show you whether you've got a nice, flat, even seal, or you're starting to get seal creep, or, there's channels or something like that within your seal. So that is a simple, easy test that can be done, documented, and put in for quality perspectives.
So right now it sounds like, as far as industry guidelines are concerned, there's no direct guideline that's referencing this type of testing that you brought up, but it's really basic common sense on the IFU side of things and maintaining the instruments that you alluded to. But then obviously, if the seal is going bad, then everything is for naught. The process has happened up until this point, and then of course after this point, through the sterilization process, it would get hot but not remain sterile if there's a run in that seal. And so you're basically asking us, hey, the guidelines maybe don't say this yet, but let's use some critical thinking and go to that level, not even beyond the best practice, but just get to the best practice that the IFUs and standard equipment maintenance would require. Is that a good description of what the ask is here?
Yeah, for sure. Once again, right now, ST79 does not call out that specific piece of equipment, but in general, all the equipment is called out to do quality testing each day it's in use, right? And so the hope is, with the opening of the new ST79, the next version, that will be something that is put in for consideration because it's so important.
To kind of boil this down, then what I heard was 2 inspection types, basically a visual inspection of the seal results that you're getting, as well as a visual inspection of the devices themselves, if it's the bar or if it's the continuous feed, to look in there and say, hey, do we see any buildup? Do we see any issues with the film that you were kind of referencing? And then obviously we can look at our seals and say, hey, does this appear to be a clean seal? And then the second test, that dye test or that ink test that you mentioned, would be the way to actually test a seal. It's gone through the process, it's been sealed from both sides, and then you can actually see the runs.
Yep, absolutely. Very simple, easy tests to do or things to look at. It's just a matter of doing it and logging it. That's the other thing, is making sure you're logging that you're doing your quality inspections and stuff. This way you can always go back and say, well, we know on this day it was perfectly fine, but now we're starting to see some rundown in issues. Maybe trace back to why are we seeing those, that kind of thing, and then to the point too with self-seal pouches, that all that talk was heat seal, right? Like there's so much around heat seal, but with self-seal pouches, it's a visual concept. There is really no ink. Now you can put the ink test in there, and I've seen, we've done it, and if there's a loop, it'll drip out, that kind of stuff. But really, because it's a one-time concept, it's not really a test, right? Like how do you?
Right. Yeah, you're just testing, was this one good, but not is the process,
exactly.
Right?
So, it's more of a visual, right? If I hold it to the side, do I see any loops? Are there any wrinkles in that seal? Or is it nice and flat and even? Or overlap? That's the other thing we see where, like one part of the seal is just laying like over, it's not lined up straight. So all of that is things to be inspecting and looking for.
Well, Malinda, if they're not hooked yet, something tells me episode next month is going to hook them for sure when we get into double pill packing. Because just like this seal question, we see it every day. We experience it every day, especially on the consulting side. It's a huge challenge out there, but double pill packing is another one of those at the very top of the list. I want to encourage everyone who's already tuning in. Hopefully you enjoy these first 2 episodes, but stay tuned. Episode 3 is going to be a blockbuster as we bring back the packaging princess herself, Malinda Elammari. And we'll see y'all again here next month. And remind you, like we do every time here at Beyond Clean, to keep fighting dirty.